I'm Robert Walker, science blogger and fact checker, and help people who are scared of various things. And this video is about how to why it is that we can trust the IPCC report. It's a systematic review, and we know how to do these systematic reviews. And even when there are all sorts of competing interests, and like the fossil fuel companies and any other kind of interest are, like with medicine, you have the tobacco companies and you have the drug companies, and yet they still know how to do systematic reviews to check the efficacy of medicines. And we know how to do that. And it's a very similar approach that is being used for the IPCC report. So I want to explain how the report works. And you get this idea that people come up with, that, and even write books and things, and they say that it's not written by scientists, it's written by politicians, and that the scientists have to do what the politicians say. And that is not true at all. So what it's all based on is this summary for policymakers, which I've brought up here. This is indeed written by politicians. This summary for policymakers is first of all co-written by politicians and scientists, and the aim is to make it so it can be understandable by the general public. And it's always is the aim that it clearly presents what's in the report, but they work it together with the policymakers to make it sure it's clearly stated and understandable. And they go through it line by line, and then at the very end the governments go through it line by line without any scientists present, so they completely, totally own it. So the idea is that the politicians then are totally behind this, that is being presented to the world. However, they don't change it. And I can read the science, and I can totally confirm that they don't change it. So if you look at it, you have all these things: figure SPM 1, chapter 1, 2, 3, 3, figure 1.5, 1.24. If you go and follow those up in the report, then what they say there is accurately summarised. I'm just going to look at one particular point here. But this sentence here, 2.1, anthropogenic emissions, including greenhouse gases, aerosols and their precursors, up to the present are unlikely to cause further warming of more than 0.5 degrees centigrade over the next 2 to 3 decades, or on a century timescale. In other words, all these people who are saying, you often get people saying, oh, we have already got enough temperature baked in, so it's going to go up to 2 degrees or 5 degrees C, whatever number they made up that morning when they woke up. And that is not, this is about that very point. And they say in 2018 that no, and the best scientific evidence that we have is that we haven't got very much heat baked in, that it's unlikely. This the calibrated language actually has a specific meaning as to what that means, that it's more than 0.5 degrees C with high confidence, and on a century timescale with medium confidence. Now, so that's what the summary for policymakers say. Now, go and look at the technical summary. So, this is written by scientists for scientists, and politicians have absolutely no hand in this at all. It's completely handed over to the scientists, and the scientists are volunteers. They're not paid for this. It's completely voluntary work. They have secure academic jobs. They're not doing this in order to maintain their job. They're doing this in order to have a good overview for all scientists to use. And so this is the technical summary by scientists for scientists. Past emissions alone are unlikely to raise global mean temperature to 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels, medium confidence. But past emissions do commit to other changes, such as further sea level rise, high confidence. And if all anthropogenic emissions, including aerosol-related, were reduced to zero immediately, any further warming beyond the 1 degrees C already experienced would likely be less than 0.5 degrees C over the next 2 to 3 decades, high confidence. So that is basically all this first sentence, but in much more detail, because scientists need more detail. Likely less than 0.5 degrees C on a century timescale, medium confidence, and that is or on a century timescale, medium confidence there. It's the same thing, but there's in more wordy and more details. Warmer greater than 1.5 degrees C is therefore not geophysically unavoidable, but it will occur depends on future rates of emission reductions. Now, this is the technical summary, and it's links to these chapters, sections 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. So now you go to the report itself, 1.23, and then it goes in great detail and summarizes. It's a long section. This is all 1.23. It's all about that bit. And if you eventually come down to 1.24, and that's what is, and there's 1.24, geophysical warming commitment. So this, all of that, and then this is a quite interesting graph. No, that's the wrong one. Oh, I'll maybe have to look it up later. There's a very interesting graph there. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's a bit further down the page. Yes, schematic pathways, and yes, it's further down. I think it's a bit further down. There's a path that actually shows the effect of totally stopping emissions. Is that the one? I don't think that's the one. Warming commitment. Oh yes, this is the one. Yes, this is the one. I just didn't quite see it. So now this shows, the yellow line here shows that if you just completely stop greenhouse gas emissions and completely stop the aerosol emissions, then this is what would happen. You get a little peak going up for about 0.15 degrees C, and then back to about 2040, we'll be back to what we are now, before 2040, mid-2030s, and then we'd end up about a quarter of a degree cooler. So this is from the scientific papers. And then you could go and look at the sites and find all the research that led to this idea. Lots of other complexities there. But so that's what they meant by there being, and then this yellow is the range of the possibilities. So when they said there that this sentence here, any further warming beyond 1.5 C already experienced would likely be less than 0.5 degrees C, they're referring to this graph, this yellow thing, which goes up to less than 0.5 degrees C in this likely range, which is what the yellow shading is there. That's what they're talking about. And there's all this, that's not just a graph, there's all this context, and then you have loads and loads of sites. See, like Fullicher and Jones 2010, Matthews 2012, Matt Moritzen and Pickus 2017, etc. All these things, whatever they are, these are all papers. Lowe and Burney 2018. And so if you're interested to find out more, you go to that site, you bring up the paper, and the paper itself will tell you whatever it is. And this graph, so here we have got these variables calculated using simple climate and Miller et al. 2017a. So, and Smith et al. 2018. So if you really want to, you can go and look up these papers. And I haven't done it for these particular ones, but I've done it for quite a lot of things. You just go and look at the paper, and exactly what they say is what this climate science paper said. And I often go from the report to the paper when I need more details and need more understanding of some particular point. So you have all of that. I sometimes start on the summary of policymakers because it's a bit shorter and quicker to read. And then you go to the technical summary if you want a short summary that's a little bit longer and more detailed, the scientific details you want. Then you go to the detailed report, and then if you're interested, you go to the actual papers. And all the way through this, it's summarized accurately. I can verify that. I've tried many times on many different topics, and they always summarize the papers accurately with everything I've checked. And we need this because the climate scientists themselves need this. It's not just written for the public, it's written for the climate scientists. And if, like from my experience when I was studying maths, and even in the tiny area of logic and foundations, if you're actually working away in that topic, it's absolutely vast, and there's no way that one person can keep track of it. My supervisor was very remarkable because he had been in the field since it began, and he knew just about everything in the field of logic. It was a tiny area of maths, and but most people wouldn't even have a chance of even understanding what someone was talking about in a slightly different area of mathematical foundations. And so it's a bit like that with climate science. So the people who've devoted their entire working life to studying aerosols, say, but they want to know about something else, about capturing CO2 emissions from cement works. Goodness knows what. They won't know a thing about that. And so they come to the IPCC report and read it there. And they give an overview of the entire literature. And most climate scientists won't know a thing about the aerosols. And so of the human aerosols, because that's not the main focus. And so they will come and say, oh, well, go and look at the report, go and read the citations. Then they'll cite the same people as the IPCC. And the IPCC, they select these citations, they have a big conferences in which hundreds of scientists come together to make sure that they're summarizing the work in their own fields correctly. So this will have been run past many climate scientists who are working on human aerosols. And then they will have been talking together in these conferences and saying, look, you've left out Joe Bloggs' paper from 2018, which is very well-founded science, and you mustn't leave it out. Or they might say, oh, that particular citation, they didn't actually, that was actually shown to be wrong a year later, you shouldn't include it, or there's something dubious about it. So it's got massive amount of feedback from the experts, and then each chapter has an expert who is an expert on that particular area of the report, who's like the leading author of the chapter, and lots of subsidiary authors who write the different bits, and then the co-chairs who coordinate all this. And we're just very lucky to have this. This is where you should start. If you've got something that you're not sure about climate science, start with the IPCC report. It is reliable. It's very, very high reputation. It's the best starting point. And then they don't on the science-based drama at all. They just follow the scientific method. Sometimes the science isn't there, and when the science isn't there, for instance, like in 2013, then there just wasn't the science to be summarized on sea level rise. So therefore, from ice sheets. So they said, if you are doing planning for sea level rise, allow for more than we've got, and sadly we just can't say how much more. Now, they, since 2018, 2019, we have much better models, and they have a range of values, and they say it's up to 1.3 meters with the very high emission scenarios. So, as the maximum likely range, then very more possibility it's more than that. So now they can answer that, so then it goes in the reports. And then sometimes there are things where all the science has just got things not quite right. Luckily, these tend to balance, and you get some where they overestimate and some where they underestimate, and both of those have happened in 2018 report. 2019, they've had both happen, and the early reports are generally pretty much in line with what we have now. But this is the best science we've got, and it's getting very, very accurate as time goes on. And this is where you should start. So anyway, I hope that helps you understand better the situation, how the IPCC reports work, that it is not written by politicians. Politicians have zero input to the actual findings. This is just involved in writing this in ways that the general public and other policymakers can understand, and to help translate. So what you have is this, which is just, put this in front of a policymaker, they won't have a clue. Put this in front of a policymaker, it's just far too wordy for them, and far too much scientific detail. Put this in front of a policymaker, and they say, oh right, yes, that's actionable. I can see what they're saying there. They haven't got the time, and they haven't got the scientific background to do all this, especially to read this. And that's why the governments get involved in this. So I hope you all understand this a bit better now. And just a reminder of our group, Facebook, Dooomsday Debunked on Facebook, where we help people who are scared of various things. You can do join either to help or if you're scared. And be sure to read the rules at the top of the group, which help to make it the guidelines that help make it function properly. And do subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this.